As Chris said, I'm Beth Mullin. I'm the Executive Director of Rock Creek Conservancy. Our organization was founded in 2005, but it was actually under a different name, Friends of Rock Creek's Environment or Force. You may have heard of us that way, possibly not. We just changed our name to Rock Creek Conservancy this year and modified our mission a little bit, and the word Rock Creek Conservancy really was a better fit. Simple, easier to remember, and better fits what our mission is, which is to protect and restore Rock Creek and the waters, parks, and lands, because you can't really look at the creek alone, and the parks are an amazing asset, so we really try to do it all. And let me take just a moment and show you Rock Creek. A lot of people think of Rock Creek as being just the part down there in DC. The map is a little distorted. It's kind of wider than that. Whoops. Trigger finger. There we go. What you see there, the area outlined in yellow, is the Rock Creek Watershed. It's 77 square miles, roughly 4 miles by 20. Rock Creek is 33 miles long. It has over 30 named tributaries, and more than 80% of Rock Creek actually is not in the district. It's in Montgomery County. The area up there at the top, which is kind of a pale green, is more the agricultural land. The pink is development, and you can see down here is Rock Creek Park, and is basically surrounded mostly by pink. Just to kind of have a little better mental image of what this area is, the eastern boundary of Rock Creek Park, of Rock Creek Watershed, roughly parallels Georgia Avenue, and the western boundary kind of runs up Wisconsin and Rockville Pike on up to Laytonsville. And it includes the Laytonsville Golf Course is up here. The watershed includes major kind of parts of downtown Silver Spring, Bethesda, Wheaton, Rockville, as well as DC. So parts of it are very urban, parts of it are kind of semi-rural. There's not really any farmland up there, but it's kind of some horse farms, and it's kind of really low-density residential development. And the watershed includes some amazingly wonderful properties, including the Mormon Temple, the National Cathedral, 80 other houses of worship, the zoo, NIH. All of that is in our watershed. Walter Reed, and of course, parkland. Amazing, wonderful, beautiful parkland. 5,000 acres all told along Rock Creek. There's park all the way along the main stem of the creek, as well as finger parks for some of its major tributaries. Roughly 2,000 acres of parkland are in DC, in Rock Creek Park. Some of it's in the watershed, some of it's not. And then, as you see, there's the main body of Rock Creek Park down there. There's also quite a large park up here that's called Rock Creek Regional Park. It's the DC line there. South of that is under the jurisdiction of the National Park Service. North of there is Montgomery County Parks. And this is just an incredible recreational resource and resource for our region. One of the really fun things I like to do is put my bike on the metro, take it up to the Shady Grove exit, get off, go over to the park, and you can take a bike path all the way down. It's downhill the whole way. If you're in better shape than I am, you can go both ways. But this very location is what presents some really some amazing opportunities as well as challenges. I don't know if you can see that very well, but basically this is the main body of Rock Creek Park in the district. It is a green island in a sea of development. And as you can see, this is really, really, really dense development on the east side of the park. The left side is still really heavily developed. This is Connecticut Avenue. This is Wisconsin. And this really presents some wonderful opportunities for recreation. I don't know if any of you all get money from the Marpat Foundation. That woman is Joan Coven's grandmother. But the area has been historically just an amazing resource. This is 75-acre Lake Needwood, which is up in Montgomery County. It's formed by a dam on Rock Creek. There's 2 large lakes, so you can actually, this one you can actually go boating and fishing on. But in 2012, there are just extraordinary opportunities, both for kind of passive recreation as well as active recreation, and the park is just an extraordinary asset for DC, and it's probably for what a lot of you makes DC livable. But at the same time, there's a lot of barriers to being able to use and enjoy those resources. Part of it sort of things we bring on ourselves, which is being kind of too busy and distracted. But part of it is a lot of people tell me, how do you even go to the park? They don't even know, even though there's like entrances everywhere if you know where they are, other people think, well, where's the main gate? How do you get to it? And there's actually a lot of both signage and access barriers for people to get to and enjoy the park. And just for all of these reasons, there's a real challenge for us looking ahead is being able to cultivate the next generation of environmental stewards, having kids out in the park. I don't know if you all are probably, a lot of you all are park users. When you go there, it's people like us that are out there. You don't see the kids really enjoying the park, actually, unless they're on people's backpacks or getting pushed in a stroller. And that's just a real issue and a real challenge for, as we look ahead as an organization of really wanting people to be environmentalists of the future, being able to do that right near where a whole lot of people live is just an incredible opportunity and something that, our organization is interested in. And also connecting people with the parks. Those neighborhoods are really near the parks. Both the National Park and we have done a survey of our members that say that 50% of the people who use the park are there once a week or more. Some people are there all the time. A lot of other people are never there. And how do you sort of really connect those neighborhoods with the park? And, it's really a challenge I think both, we're really thinking about. There's abundant opportunities for education for kind of really a sustainable future. About sustainability, climate change. This is you can really see it right in the park, and this is a real opportunity to be able to do that. And one of the wonderful things that's happened recently is Pierce Mill has reopened, and if you haven't gone to it, you can go, come out on the weekend and see, grain being ground. It's really cool. But at the same time, there is another facility challenge, which is the Rock Creek Nature Center. The park has wonderful interpretive staff, but the facility was built in 1960, the same year as that pink Cadillac, and it is not, no offense, Tara, and it's not what it could be. Elsewhere in Rock Creek Park, there are other nature centers that are actually, quite modern and beautiful and much more really accessible to what people now want. And that's just other nature centers in Rock Creek Park, Croydon Creek in Rockville, as well as Meadowside up a little bit farther north. And other national park facilities are in better shape. Now looking at moving toward kind of those are the recreational and educational opportunities which are really there. In terms of sustainability, this very location that makes it a great resource for education and recreation also just provides a number of environmental threats. I know you all are sort of probably familiar with stormwater, which is the #1 threat to creek health, as well as really damaging to the park. This picture illustrates both the volume and the pollution issue, and that what you're seeing here is a lot of water. This is taken in Rock Creek Park. The water is also brown, and where that brown is coming from is the park itself. Virtually the main stem and all of the tributaries are eroding, and significantly more eroded just in the last few years. This is an outfall that drains from Mount Pleasant neighborhood into the Piney Branch section of the park. A tall adult shows you that that used to be at ground level. That is all erosion and is taller than a person. This is the Pinehurst section of the park up in the North Point. And that creek, that's how wide it used to be, which is maybe a foot and a half, a little meandering creek. The stream bed is now 20 feet wide, and the creek normally is just in part of it, but during a heavy rain, that creek is 20 feet wide, and it's badly eroding, toppling trees the whole length of the creek. This shows you volunteers doing a cleanup, and it's hard to even get down the wall of the canyon that's now the creek to get to the trash. So that's really, an extraordinarily serious problem. It is being tackled by a wall of acronyms, government programs, in every jurisdiction, both in Montgomery County, in Rockville, in DC, as well as the water and sewer authorities in both jurisdictions, as well as federal properties, as well as you can do things in your own yard to really trap and infiltrate water so that, or address stormwater another way to be able to try to reduce that erosion. The problem is it all costs a lot of money. These programs are extraordinarily expensive, but at the same time, not doing something about the stormwater problem is even more expensive. In that, that same erosion, took out Klingle Road, which I know a lot of you all are familiar with, but it really threatens infrastructure throughout the watershed. Roads, bridges, pipelines, a lot of the water and sewer lines are buried along the creek beds. Basically, water goes downhill, the pipes go downhill, and those are being exposed. And so protecting that infrastructure is literally billions of dollars. So putting money into stormwater management really makes a lot of sense, not just for the, one of the programs that's going on now is River Smart in DC, Rock Creek Conservancy. Whoops, I skipped one. I'm going in the wrong direction, excuse me. Previous to 1, 2. You all are getting sneak peek.
I know.
Sorry.
Okay.
Oh, come on, Braden, we're seeing your picture twice. River Smart program in DC is one of the programs Rock Creek Conservancy is working on. We're working on a pilot project where we're doing 2 targeted neighborhoods, one east of the creek, one of the west of the creek, working to blitz those 2 areas with low-impact development techniques to basically get water to soak into the ground rather than running off the roofs and streets into the road. We're doing the homes and businesses part. We're putting in rain gardens and other water infiltration techniques on 50 private properties. That project is well underway. And then the DDOT is also going to be doing work in the schools, and Department of Environment is doing work in the streets and alleys. So there's going to be a massive project. We did 6 months of monitoring to calculate the rainfall beforehand, blitzing it with all these projects to increase infiltration, and then measure again to see how well this green approach to stormwater management works. So it's kind of basically an on-the-ground field test that's quite exciting. You can read more about it on our website. A second project that has been underway has been actually, instead of, that work is all outside the park. Another project that's really cool inside the park has been creation of what's called step pools to take in a road. There's two tributaries to Rock Creek, north of Military Road near Bingham Road, Bingham Run, Milkhouse Run. They both looked terrible like that. A really major project has been done to put in a series of step pools, which both basically look really like a really natural environment, which will capture runoff and treat it because there's a sand filter to kind of trickle. And I set that aside because when I was out there taking the pictures, I was looking at that pool. The project had just been put in, and a frog jumped into that pool right as I was taking the picture. And this is going to both look like a natural stream as well as provide habitat. This was a great project jointly done between the National Park Service and the DC Department of the Environment. And, whoops, go ahead. One of the issues with that, you can see one of the step pools there, is it also included a planting component where there are literally hundreds of trees and shrubs planted. We had volunteers out doing that work, but a cage had to be put around every single one of the new plants to keep them from being eaten by deer.
Did it work?
They're in place there now. We'll see. That just went in late summer. Moving to sort of just a second sustainability issue is trash is a major issue for that. Trash comes in basically through the storm drains as well as littering. And whenever a tree is down in for a log jam or a cross bridge or any kind of obstruction, it catches the trash instead of having it go on downstream to the Potomac. Our Rock Creek Conservancy organizes a Rock Creek Extreme Cleanup, where volunteers go out and pick up trash as part of the Alice Ferguson Watershed, Rock Creek, Potomac River Basin cleanup. And we've had, we basically organize a cleanup along the full 33-mile length of Rock Creek, more than 50 sites each April. And one of the interesting things that I see about the statistics is that the number of bags of trash that we pick up is almost the same every year, but the tons of junk collected has dropped dramatically. And what these statistics say to us is we've gotten a lot of the vintage trash out that's been there a long time. You know, the cars that have been there for years are now gone. And this, to me, is starting to look like the dumping that kind of comes in each year. And these numbers look like the litter that comes in each year. And so in terms of coming up with a strategy to reduce that, you know, we really have to kind of look at ways to get those numbers down, as well as to, you know, try to get those numbers down. And one of the things to note is we also have people count bags, number of plastic bags. Our volunteers have picked up 22,000 plastic bags along the length of Rock Creek. But in D.C., after passage of the bag bill, the number dropped by 23% between 2010 and 2011, yes! And now Montgomery County has a bag bill, so the entire length of Rock Creek is now protected by that. The next step, bottles. That's what you really see in the creek. And those, you know, those are a concern because they're ugly, and both with the bags and the bottles are lightweight. What happens is they basically wash through down to the Potomac and the Chesapeake Bay. And you know, when you're looking at the creek, you see stuff along the banks. You don't see that much in the water, but basically that is all flushed out every time there's a heavy rain. So that's you know, the next step. The next thing I'd like to talk about is what I call the tree loss trifecta, which I think is really the most serious issue facing Rock Creek, in that what you have is kind of a combination of wild weather, which knocks down particularly the big trees, and I'm sure you all have seen those fallen in the park. The wind patterns are different, and so you lose the big trees in a way that you didn't used to. And when the banks are eroding, you also lose a lot of trees. Those create a window, they open up a space in the canopy. And in the olden days, that was viewed as sort of a kind of a healthy thing, because it would essentially release young seedlings to grow up, so you'd have sort of a, you know, a mixed forest, big trees, little trees, and that kind of thing. But what happens now is when you get a hole in the canopy, virtually every tree seedling is eaten by deer. And so there's almost no regeneration of trees in the park. So every time you lose a tree, you're not going to get a new tree. You're going to get a tangle of invasive plants. Because the deer like to eat the natives, they don't really care for the invasives. They eat them if they're desperate. So whenever you lose a tree, you're getting the invasives instead of kind of a new forest. And that really puts the entire park system at risk in terms of both its health and its beauty. This is a section of park that's just north of Boundary Bridge, between Boundary Bridge and Candy Cane City. And virtually everything you see here is invasive except for the trees. And what you don't see is any baby trees. You don't see any young trees there. What you see is just a complete carpet of invasives. Lesser celandine threatens all of the spring wildflowers, the native spring wildflowers. And I sort of can't overemphasize how serious a problem this is for in terms of the threat. And it really basically is changing what the park already looks like and will look like in the future. And so I think that's just something that we all need to think about in terms of its sustainability and kind of what needs to be done. I now notice when I read magazine articles, and sometimes you'll see like an advertisement just that'll show, you know, it'd be like kids playing, or, you know, even I noticed one for a wristwatch that happened to be set in the woods, and I was looking at every single leaf in there was an invasive. And you know, I was thinking, you know, it may really change how we see nature. So, you know, we can talk about that. I don't want to take too much more time, but it's truly an important issue, and our organization is particularly concerned about the loss of trees, because again, every tree you lose, you're not going to get one back. And vines grow up to trees, they make them heavy, they sort of basically either slowly strangle them, or when you get a big wind, the tree is now heavier and it topples. So we have a lot of volunteers that we encourage to be out there, just cutting around the base so that the vine dies and the trees have sort of a chance to keep on growing. And one of our programs is called a Stream Team program, where we have people adopt sections of creek or parkland, the entire length of Rock Creek. There you can see Rock Creek, and this is where we now have teams where people can do things like pick up trash, work on invasives, and that kind of thing. It all has to be done, with permission, and in close coordination with the Park Service and Montgomery County Parks. But our view is that, in the areas that are, people who live here really love Rock Creek and really care about its future and really want to make a difference. And so we don't actually have any trouble at all recruiting volunteers, because people want to be involved and they want to be engaged. And that's a real opportunity for the future in terms of dealing with all of these environmental problems, whether it's stormwater or trash or invasives, is that people really want to make a difference. And our organizational strategy, let's really try to engage people in the communities to be involved in their park, because it's a way to teach people about nature, to have them out there doing physical activity and enjoying being in the woods, as well as doing something to give back. Oops. And the other thing that we're thinking is strengthening partnerships is the only really way to really protect these parks for the future and to really have everybody engaged. Our organization is now working on a strategic planning process, and to try to figure out how we can be most effective to really support the parks and to really help clean up Rock Creek and really support the important work that the parks are doing and that we want to do. And I'd like to really invite all of you to work with us and to participate with us in trying to figure out that future, because I know there's a lot of people in this room who have really long and deep knowledge of Rock Creek and a real interest in seeing it's protected, and we would love to work with you. I got a stack of cards. Please take one. And I think it's such a vital resource for our city, and really could use a lot of help. So that's it.
Now I'm going to turn this off.